At 75, I believed life had finally slowed to a gentle, predictable rhythm. My mornings were quiet, my afternoons peaceful, and my evenings spent in the soft glow of the living room lamp, knitting or reading old letters that reminded me of who I once was. After 50 years of marriage, Edward and I had settled into a steady companionship built on routine. Or so I thought. It was only when our daughter Lily moved back home that the first cracks began to show, cracks I tried desperately to ignore. Lily's divorce had been abrupt and painful. She arrived with 3 suitcases, swollen eyes, and the kind of silence that told me the wounds were still raw. As her mother, I opened my arms and my home. Edward, too, welcomed her with what I assumed was fatherly concern, though something in his eagerness tugged at a corner of my mind I refused to examine. For weeks, I told myself not to overthink. We were a family, after all. Families supported each other through storms. But it was the nights that unsettled me. The first time I heard footsteps passing our bedroom door long after midnight, I thought Edward was simply using the restroom. Men his age often struggled with sleep. I had no reason to suspect anything unusual. When the footsteps didn't return for nearly an hour, I convinced myself he must have fallen asleep on the couch again. Something he did occasionally when his joints bothered him. But the second night, and the third, and every night that followed, it became impossible to dismiss. The house had an old soul. It carried sound like whispered secrets. The creak of the hallway floorboards, the faint click of Lily's doorknob, the murmur of voices too low to understand. All of it filtered into my half-dreaming ears. And each time, I lay still, staring into the dark, my heart tapping nervously against my ribs. I told myself they were simply talking. Maybe Lily was struggling more than she let on, and Edward, always the practical one, was offering advice. Maybe he didn't want to wake me with their conversation. But the discomfort in their hushed tones, the urgency in their movements, didn't sound like comforting a daughter. It sounded like secrecy. Attention. Something being hidden from me. Still, I clung to my faith in Edward. 5 decades of marriage teaches you loyalty even when doubt tries to creep in. I reminded myself of anniversaries we celebrated, the losses we survived together, the promises we made before family and God. I told myself I was imagining things, that old age makes shadows appear deeper and voices seem strange. Yet intuition is a strange companion at my age. Quieter than it used to be, but sharper. And mine whispered that something was terribly wrong. One evening, while clearing dishes after dinner, I watched Lily and Edward exchange a glance. A quick one. Too quick. Their eyes flicked toward me, then away. Lily excused herself early. Edward followed minutes later, saying he needed to check something downstairs. I stood in the kitchen with soapy hands, feeling a coldness seep into my bones. I could no longer pretend not to notice. That night, after Edward slipped out of bed again, I sat up with my heart pounding. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't follow him. I simply listened, counting the seconds as he moved down the hall toward Lily's room. By morning, I knew I had to stop lying to myself. If I wanted answers, I needed proof, unwavering, undeniable truth. So, with trembling hands and a heart heavier than I'd ever known, I ordered a tiny camera and placed it discreetly facing the hallway. I prayed it would reveal nothing. But deep down, I feared it would reveal everything. The next morning, after Edward and Lily left for their errands, I closed the curtains, locked the door, and sat alone in the living room with the small camera trembling in my hands. It felt strange, almost sinful, to spy on my own family. I had never snooped through drawers, never checked phones, never questioned Edward's loyalty. For 50 years, trust was the quiet foundation beneath our lives. And yet there I was, a 75-year-old woman bracing herself for the truth, as if it were a storm about to break through the windows. I connected the camera to my old laptop and pressed play. At first, the footage showed nothing but the dim hallway lit by the nightlight I kept for late trips to the bathroom. The walls looked ghostly, stretching long shadows toward Lily's door. I watched myself walk to bed around 10, switching off the lamp, moving slowly the way age teaches you to. Then the screen was still. Silent. Hours slipped by in fast forward, the timestamp blinking quietly as the house slept. Then, at 1:17 a.m., a door opened. Edward's figure emerged, hunched slightly as if he knew he shouldn't be seen. He walked down the hallway, pausing once to look over his shoulder. Even in grainy resolution, I recognized that cautious glance. It was the look of someone hiding something, not the look of a man comforting a grieving daughter. My pulse quickened. He knocked softly, barely audible. Lily's door opened before he even finished knocking, as though she'd been waiting. She stepped out, her face pale in the faint light, her expression tense, not sad, not weary, but calculating. My heart sank further. They whispered. I turned the volume to its highest level, leaning in so close my breath fogged the screen. Still, their voices were bits and pieces, fragments stitched together by the quietest syllables. Do you have it? Lily whispered. Edward nodded and pulled something from under his robe. A small leather folder, his. No, my leather folder. The one I kept in the safe. The footage showed him gently opening it, revealing a stack of papers. Even in the poor lighting, I recognized the cream-colored edge of the property deed. My house, my land. The inheritance plans I drafted years ago. A coldness gripped my chest. Lily snatched the papers from him, flipping through them quickly. If we don't push her soon, she whispered sharply, she might change her mind. Edward rubbed his forehead. She trusts us. We just need a bit more time. Lily leaned closer. Dad, once she's declared unfit, everything becomes ours. But the lawyer said we need her signature on the care facility form first. Declared unfit. Care facility. My blood ran cold. The room around me blurred. I gripped the arm of the chair to steady myself. Feeling suddenly decades older, Edward continued, his voice low. She's been forgetting things lately. We can use that. Forgetting things? Misplacing keys, yes. Taking longer to recall a name, yes. But that was normal aging, not incompetence. And certainly not a reason to strip someone of their home, their autonomy, their dignity. Lily spoke again, her tone chillingly firm. Tomorrow morning we'll tell her doctor she's been confused. Once the papers are ready, she won't question them. She signs, we take control. Simple. Simple. The word echoed through me like a blade. I watched the rest in a numb haze. Edward placing the papers back in the folder. Lily handing him a set of keys I didn't recognize, both of them slipping silently back into their rooms like thieves retreating into the night. When the footage ended, I did not cry. I did not scream. I sat perfectly still, listening to the ticking clock, feeling 50 years of trust erode inside me like old paint peeling off a forgotten wall. They weren't comforting each other. They weren't grieving together. They were planning a future, one without me in it. The betrayal was complete. And now, so was my clarity. For the first few hours after watching the footage, I felt hollow, like a house whose walls still stood but whose foundation had crumbled. 50 years of marriage, sacrificed without a second thought. A daughter I had carried, fed, and comforted now plotting against me with the man who vowed to protect me until death. Their betrayal should have broken me, but instead it reshaped me. By evening, something inside me had sharpened. A strength I didn't know I still possessed rose to the surface, steady and cold. If they wanted to treat me like a helpless old woman, then I would let them believe exactly that. Long enough for me to unravel their entire scheme. The next morning, I acted weaker than usual. I pretended to forget where I placed the sugar jar, let my hands tremble just slightly when lifting the kettle, and even asked Lily to repeat simple questions. She looked almost pleased, like a vulture circling its prey. Edward watched quietly, a calculating look sneaking across his eyes whenever he thought I wasn't paying attention. Let them underestimate me. Let them think their plan was already unfolding. While they whispered in corners and exchanged those secretive looks, I made my own plans, quietly, carefully, methodically. My first ally was my neighbor and oldest friend, Irene. She had seen enough of life to recognize deceit even before I told her everything. When I showed her the footage, her jaw tightened, and she reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "You're not going down without a fight," she said firmly. "And you don't have to do it alone." Her confidence lit a flame in me. She drove me to a lawyer she trusted. A sharp, composed woman named Charlotte who listened patiently as I recounted everything. When I pulled out the camera and showed her the recording, her expression shifted from sympathy to icy professionalism. "This is not just betrayal," she said. This is fraud, coercion, and attempted property theft. And you have clear evidence. For the first time in days, I breathed deeply. Charlotte worked quickly. With the footage, she arranged emergency legal protections that Edward and Lily knew nothing about. My will was rewritten entirely. Every asset now placed under a protective trust they could not access. My house, my savings, my land, locked away behind legal walls stronger than any safe. Next, she helped me draft a statement detailing their manipulation, dated and notarized. And finally, she advised me to record a personal video message for future use. It felt strange talking into the camera, pouring out my heartbreak and resolve, but I knew it would matter soon. By the time I returned home, I was fully shielded. Yet I didn't reveal anything. Not yet. I resumed my act, moving slowly, hesitating before speaking, letting them see only what they wanted to see. A fragile old woman. A burden. Someone ready to be placed away. That Friday they finally struck. Edward approached me with a carefully rehearsed expression of concern. "Margaret, love, we've noticed you've been forgetful lately," he began, voice dripping with false tenderness. "We think it might be time to consider extra support." Lily entered with a stack of documents, her tone soft but her eyes gleaming. "Mom, it's just a form. It's for your own good." They expected confusion. They expected fear. They expected compliance. Instead, I smiled, gently, sweetly, the way a grandmother smiles at a child who doesn't yet know she sees straight through them. "Of course," I said. "Let's sit in the dining room." As they followed me, papers ready, pens uncapped, they didn't notice the small device in my hand. My lawyer and Irene were waiting in the next room. The stage was set. Their trap was ready. But mine was already sprung. We gathered around the dining table. The same table where we once celebrated holidays, shared birthdays, laughed over burnt dinners, and held hands through storms of life. But that morning the air felt different. Heavy. Electric. Charged with the weight of truths about to surface. Edward sat to my right, pretending calm superiority, as if he were guiding a confused wife into sensible decisions. Lily sat across from me, smoothing her hair, pushing the stack of documents toward my place at the table. Her smile was thin and brittle, the kind someone wears when victory seems close enough to touch. "Mom, don't worry," she said softly. "Just sign on the last page. It's nothing complicated. Nothing complicated. Only my life, my home, my freedom." I lifted the pen slowly, letting my fingers tremble just enough to keep them convinced. Edward watched eagerly. His foot tapped beneath the table. Nervous excitement or guilt, I could not tell. After 50 years, I realized I hardly knew him at all. Just as the pen touched the paper, I paused. "Actually," I said, looking toward the doorway, "I think we should have another opinion." Edward frowned. "Another opinion? Margaret, this isn't." Before he could finish, Irene stepped into the room, followed by Charlotte, my lawyer, holding a thick folder. The color drained from both their faces. Lily's smile collapsed. Edward's jaw clenched. "What is this?" Lily snapped, her voice suddenly sharp. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the moment settle. "This," I said, "is the moment you both realize you've underestimated the wrong woman." Charlotte placed the folder on the table. "Mr. and Ms. Lawson, I'm here on behalf of Margaret. I advise you not to speak until you understand the situation." Lily stood, panic flaring in her eyes. "Mom, why is a lawyer here? What's going on?" Instead of answering, I reached into the drawer beside me and pressed play on the small speaker. The audio from the night the camera recorded filled the room. Edward's voice, Lily's voice, their whispers discussing my property, my supposed memory problems, their plan to have me declared unfit. Every word shot through the room like knives. Edward's face went chalk white. Lily's legs buckled and she dropped into her chair. "Mom, wait," she stammered. "It's not what it sounds like. We were just planning to take everything I've earned?" I asked quietly. "Just planning to put me away so you could live comfortably on my life's work? Just lying, stealing, and pretending to care?" The silence between us hardened into something irrevocable. Charlotte slid legal documents toward them. Court orders, revocations, formal statements. "You are both removed from any inheritance. All assets have been transferred to a protected trust. Any attempt to coerce her will be reported to authorities. Lily burst into tears. Edward reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. His hand hung there, empty in the air between us, as fragile and false as all his promises. You can't do this. Lily cried. Oh, I already have, I said. My voice was steady, strong. I may be old, but that does not make me weak. It makes me wise. Edward tried once more. Margaret, please. We were worried. You've been forgetful. Don't lie to me, I said. Not anymore. Their plan unraveled right before them. The papers they brought became meaningless scrap. Their authority, their confidence, their illusion of control. It all dissolved in the span of minutes. Within an hour they were gone. Not by force, but by choice, because facing me, facing what they'd done, was more than they could endure. In the months that followed, peace settled into my home like sunlight through open curtains. I tended my garden, shared meals with Irene, attended community gatherings, and rediscovered the joy of choosing my own life. On my 76th birthday, I sat on the porch with a cup of warm tea, watching the horizon glow in golden streaks. I felt light, unburdened, whole, and more alive than I had in years. I lost a husband and a daughter. I whispered to the sunset, but I found my truth, and I finally reclaimed myself. Their betrayal ended my illusions. My revenge ended their power. And in the calm that followed, I found not bitterness, but freedom.